Hello, hello, hello. How are you guys doing this evening? It is 1:41 a.m. on this beautiful Saturday evening, going into Sunday. And I was just driving around talking to my good Judy Mel, my partner in the book club. Tomorrow is our live stream for the book club at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it is about the book The Perfect Father by John Glatt, and it's about the Chris and Shanann Watts case. So she was going to send me some videos that I'm going to watch when I'm done with this. And I'm actually really, really hungry. I haven't eaten since brunch, and I'm thinking that I might drive. Well, we'll see. I don't know. It's like a half an hour, but I could do this for my to do the vlog. I'm thinking about driving north to Anderson to the White Castle up there and getting some mozzarella sticks, and then sitting in the parking lot and watching one of the documentaries, and then driving back and listening to a podcast about it or a documentary or something. Just listening to it while I'm driving back so that I can be fully ready to discuss the case tomorrow. Mel and I basically have like the next 5 or 6 months of what like cases we're going to talk. We don't know which case for each month, but we have some like really good cases that are very interesting that we want to talk about over the next 5 or 6 months. So I'm excited about that. And we talked forever tonight on the phone. Oh my God, what a day today. So I woke up today. I was going to go to this farmer's market in Fishers, but I didn't end up going because I wanted to sleep in. I slept until like 11:30 and got such a fantastic night's sleep. I woke up and I was like looking right at little Boo Radley, and he was so sweet and I was so comfy, and I just kept on hitting the snooze button. And then Tucker came up and slept with me too, and I mean, he was at the end of the bed, but he came up closer to where Boo and I were sleeping. He was so sweet. And Alex had to work just like a part of the day today, so he got home about noon, and then we went to brunch. But before that, I was going through emails that I had received on like just in all like I try to go through like 20 or 30 emails a day on each of my accounts. Like my booktube account, my review account, and then like, you know, my account with my YouTube channel, my main one. And I was going through these emails because I get so many emails and I just cannot respond to all of them. And so I was going through and I was trying to read them, and I hadn't really looked at my booktube email in a while, and I had received this email, and it said something about my grandma's like Department of Correction records, and I was like, what is this? And it was from like 2 weeks ago, like 10 days ago, something like that. And I think it was almost like 2 weeks ago actually. So I like opened this email, and this woman who watches my videos reached out to me, and she's like, I'm not a stalker, I'm a genealogist, and I really enjoy doing this stuff. She like said she spent all this time at Starbucks looking up my stuff on the computer. She found my grandma's Department of Correction record. I was like, I don't even know really how to explain how I felt in that moment. So if you're new to my channel and you haven't watched my vlogs before, I've talked about this at length, but when my mom passed away, later that year, I was at my dad's house and I was sitting around talking to him on the patio. It would have been after I started dating Alex because Alex was there. Maybe it was the following year even, I don't know. But I asked my dad, I said, you know, did mom have any secrets that, you know, if I even knew what a question I was asking when I asked that, you know, anyway. So I said, did mom have any secrets, you know, that I never knew that she died with, basically? And my dad was like, no, not really, which, you know, now in retrospect, I found that there's like so many different secrets. But he said, well, he goes, just one. He goes, it was something that your mom and Kathy didn't want you and Caroline to know, but I don't think it would really matter now that your mom is gone. And I said, well, what is it? And he said that your grandma went to prison And your mom told me before we got married, and I said, that doesn't make a difference to me. You know, I don't think of her differently because of that or anything. And so, and this is important because this is part of the story. Because I had also found, then I started like going through stuff, and I had found these letters. Like, my mom had said that she used to go to Hyannisport in the summers of college, and that she would spend the summers out there working in this hospital on, like, by Cape Cod. And she even talked about, like, when Carolyn Kennedy was born, and that Jackie Kennedy came through the hospital and they toured it with security. She had this whole elaborate story that I really think in retrospect my mom made the whole thing up. So bizarre. I don't know. Like, my dad, he says, like, your mom very much lived in this fantasy world and made things up. And I'm like, really? Like, but like, so anyway, she's this whole elaborate story about going to Cape Cod and whatever. Well, we had also talked at times about, like, my mom, like, having, she had said, like, when my mom was alive, I would talk about, like, wanting to go to Miami or South Florida or whatever, and she'd say, oh, I always wanted to go to Miami too, and I never went to Miami, what she would say. So, so when she would talk to me about going to to Cape Cod, she would say, or the East Coast, to work in the summer. She'd say she worked there in the summers in college. That she met this gay guy named Howard. My dad even said his name today on the phone. He even knew this name. And that she worked with this gay guy named Howard, and they were, like, really good friends. Okay, now people will think this is kind of funny because I always say the good Judy thing in my videos. But my mom said, like, she quoted him, and she said, like, he would write me these letters. And she said, and you know, I look back and I wonder if that was, like, around the time that I came out or something, and my mom was like, I don't know, trying to make me feel better about that or whatever. I have no idea. Or maybe she had a friend at some point that was gay, and I mean, my mom had gay friends when I was growing up, but that she would go out dancing and stuff with, but it wasn't this guy, because I actually found letters that she wrote with this guy. She told me I would find the letters at some point. They were in the basement, and I would find them after she was gone. Okay? I never found any letters. She said they said things like he would write her and be like, oh, I miss you so much, and we had so much fun this summer, and couldn't you just die without Judy Garland? He was, like, obsessed with Judy Garland and would always talk about Judy. Judy this and Judy that, right? Which is actually where the good Judy thing comes from. Is, like, gay guys, like, years and years and years ago used to say it in regards to Judy Garland. Which is really funny because my mom, like, I'm kind of thinking this through as I'm talking. She really liked the movie The Boys in the Band, and it was about a group of gay friends. She would talk about this movie all the time. And, like, I almost kind of wonder if she didn't make up this character from one of the guys in the movie. Like, I've never watched that old movie since my mom has passed away. We watched it together one time, like, when she was alive, and I didn't love it. I think Donald Sutherland is in it, and a couple of other people. They're actually doing a remake of it, I just saw, and it's like a lot of the guys that were in the Ryan Murphy shows. I wonder if he's directing it. I don't know, but apparently they're doing a remake of The Boys in the Band. If you don't know what I'm talking about, The Boys in the Band was, like, this really famous movie that came out, like, in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, and it was about this group of gay friends, and it was just how they, like, you know, interacted. But anyway, she would talk about this movie. So she had this friend named Howard, and he, like, was on the East Coast and whatever, and she worked with him in his hospital. My mom said she worked in the cafeteria of a hospital. And, that Jackie Kennedy came through. She didn't end up having her baby at that hospital, but they had to make sure that it was, like, okay, just in case she happened to be there, that would be the hospital, like, where their compound was or whatever, that she would end up coming to in case she went into labor. It was, like, this whole elaborate story. So anyway, I'm gonna go this way. Okay, so mind you, that is summers that my mom was in college, okay? Well, my mom graduated from high school in 61. My aunt graduated from high school in 59. So my mom's summers in high school would have been the summer of 61 before she went to college, 62, 63, 64, and then 65 would have been her summer after she went to college 4 years and graduated. She didn't go any more than that. So it would have been, like, you know, 61 through 65 would have been those summers. So anyway, at the time, I started going on this search and trying to find all these letters and whatever. And I actually did find these letters. Well, I found like 2 letters that were ripped up. And I think the guy's name was Howard. And I'm almost positive of that. And, it had his last name on it too. They were letters that he had written her. And I can't remember, I don't know where I put those. I can't remember the dates of the letters. But there were like pictures too. And the pictures were like of my mom and my aunt in Miami, Florida. And of like the summer in college that they went there and stayed. And they stayed at the Delano Hotel. Like, these letters said stuff about the Delano Hotel and meeting my mom, and it was like the summer of his life and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, what is this? Like, when I'm reading it, right? So I go and I have lunch with my aunt, and we're sitting there. It was like for my birthday or something. She and I went to lunch. We went to Sullivan's right up the street. And, because this was before I was a vegetarian. And that was, yeah. So, because I'd been a vegetarian, then I stopped being a vegetarian because she would always laugh at me because she loved Sullivan's because they had like really great steak. It's a steakhouse. I think they probably is a chain. I don't know. But anyway, I always got a cheeseburger because I thought I don't eat them anymore, obviously, as a vegetarian, but that steakhouses have the best cheeseburgers is what I've always said. Or I would get chicken. She would always laugh at me because I would get like, you know, some kind of like chicken breast when I would go to a steakhouse. And she'd be like, why? And I'm like, it doesn't matter. I don't want a steak. I did like steak, but I didn't, wouldn't eat it very often. So anyway, every once in a while I'd get like a filet, but when I was growing up, I loved New York strips. My dad used to always make New York strips on the grill with wild rice and this spinach souffle from Stouffer's. I loved it. Anyway, that's beside the point. So we were there, and I brought it up, and she got very angry, and she said, your dad should never have told you that. Your mom and I didn't want you and Caroline ever to know. And I had already told Caroline, and I told her, I said, well, I already told Caroline. And Caroline even said, like, she didn't think her mom would say anything. Like, she wouldn't tell me anything. And so I said, well, what's the deal? And she goes, Grandma went to prison. And I go, okay, for what? And she goes, my dad had told me embezzlement. And so I said, Grandma apparently went to prison for embezzlement? And she goes, yes. And she was like very short with me in explaining everything. And she said, which then Caroline told me on the phone today when I talked to her, that my grandma got in trouble later at this, like, she worked for this other business, and Caroline ended up working there when she was in high school, and that my grandma got in trouble there too for taking money or something. Anyway, so I'm having this conversation with my aunt, and so I said, well, I found all these letters from this guy from Florida. So Mom never went to, I don't remember what she said about my mom going to the East Coast. I think she didn't really give me like a straight answer on that. But like my mom even said stuff like, Grandma used to put in like a 20 in my suitcase because she was so worried about me not having money. But but even though I saved money, like working and whatever. But my mom never worked when she was like at IU. Like, so I don't know, and that never occurred to me until recently. Like, she saved money to go to the East Coast, but like, what money would she have been going on? Like, And then my dad said to me like a couple months ago, or maybe a month ago, when he and I were talking about it, I said to him something about the East Coast. I said, did Mom, like, because they went there, that was their honeymoon, they went to Cape Cod. She was like, my mom was obsessed with Cape Cod. I don't know why. I think it was probably because she was obsessed with the Kennedys, and anything to do with the Kennedys and their compound over there and all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, when you went to Cape Cod, did Mom act like did she say, oh, this is where I had a bonfire, or oh, this is where I lived, or... He goes, no, she didn't know anything. She didn't know anything about that area. And I said, did you ask her at the time? My dad's not somebody that like pries. So he wouldn't have been there like, oh, I can't believe that you're not noticing things, like that would be me. But my dad doesn't do that kind of stuff. He goes, no, I just, I thought, whatever, I don't know. Maybe, my dad was young back then. My dad was kind of like a really, like, innocent, naive. He would never think that somebody would make up a story like that for whatever reason, let alone that she was trying to cover her tracks because her mother went to prison or something like that. Who knows, right? So, okay, when I found these letters from this guy, I even tracked him down. I couldn't find him anywhere. So I actually Googled his name, and I found an obituary from like one of his parents had passed away like years before that. And I, oh God, I wish I had the email that he had sent me. I should look it up in my phone and see if I still have it. I have no idea where I sent it from what or whatever. But I found his sister because she was also listing the obituary on Facebook, and I contacted her and asked her if she had a brother, and she said yes. And I said, I think that like my mother possibly dated your brother and whatever. And I reached out to him via email, and I sent a picture, and he responded and said, yes, I dated your mother for an entire summer, and it was in Florida, and I was very much in love with your mother. I thought we would get married. And I mean, she never talked about this guy to me, never. And he's like, she really kind of broke my heart. And he was like, you know, you look very much like your mom. He was like, you know, I'm really sorry to hear about the fact that she passed away. That makes me very sad. And it was just this really endearing like email that he sent me. And I never responded because I didn't really know what to say, you know? And, so anyway, I don't know where that email would be, or if I had it. I have no idea where I would have saved it. But I remember I was telling Tanya about it at the time. Tanya and I were driving around, and I was like, I was like consumed with it, right? And I was like, and I want to know this, and I want to know that. And Tanya reached over, she put her hand on my leg, and she said, sweetie, she said, I think there are just some things you don't need to know. And I can remember we had a conversation, and I said to her, like, you know, like if you passed away, like, don't you think like Nick has a right to know things that whatever? She said, absolutely not, her son. And she was like, there's a lot of things he doesn't need to know about my life, you know, that's my life. It's, you know, it's my stuff. And so it really made me kind of like reevaluate. And I remember talking to my sponsor at the time agreed and was like, yeah, I think there are things that your mom they were her things. You don't necessarily, just because you're her son, have a right to know all of those things or why she kept them from you or whatever. All right, that car's going so fast. So anyway, God, I didn't plan to talk this whole time about this tonight, but anyway. By the way, I did try my roller skates, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But anyway, this story is probably so boring to some people. They're like, oh my God, we've heard this a million times. But for the people that haven't, I'm going to put it in here. So, that was me contacting that guy. So then I couldn't figure out, like, did she go to the East Coast or did she just go to Miami and whatever? And then I kind of started putting pieces together when I found out about the prison thing, and I was like, well, maybe they went to prison, or maybe they went to Miami on, like, that's where they got the money. So I said to my aunt that day at lunch, I said, did you go to Florida? She said they went to Florida for that summer. Summer. Now I don't know which summer it was. And she's gone, and I can't ask her. And I said, how did you guys afford to be in Florida for an entire summer? So I do know that they were in Florida for an entire summer, because my dad today was like, they weren't in Florida for an entire summer. I said, Dad, Aunt Kathy told me that they were. And he goes, well, how could that even be possible? And I go, well, Aunt Kathy said on Grandma's embezzled money. So this is what happened. I get this Department of Corrections record today. Now she went out of her way to show me like how to request the court records and how to do all, and she was so fantastic. She really went, like, I am so like thankful. I can't even believe it. So anyway, I'm going to request the whole court record. God, this construction area is about killing cars right here. Because that's the only one she could find. But if there were other records, it might say that in the court. It might say like this was her second time being arrested, or you know what I'm saying, something like that. So anyway, I was talking to Tanya today, and she was like, did you ever meet this grandma? I'm like, Tanya, like, I've talked to you about this like 1,000 times. Yes, I met this grandma. She died when I was 13. We were really close. And she was like, oh, I just did. I said, oh, Tanya. So anyway, I've told everybody about this today. So I get the record, and she was sentenced for grand larceny, and she was sentenced in 1965 She got paroled in 1966, but then her sentence, she got, was completely released in 1967, okay? Which would mean that, I think she was in prison for, a year and a half and then on parole for a year, is how I understand it when I look at it, but I could be wrong. So, I'm, looking at this, and I'm like, okay, these years don't make sense. Because that would have been when my mom was done with college, all right? And, that just does not add up. Especially with my aunt saying, well, probably on grandma's embezzled money. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at why my aunt would have been legally responsible for my mom at that time, which that was discussed with my aunt. So I'm almost wondering if there was another time that had happened previously, which I've speculated anyway. So I don't know. Maybe I'll find that out. I hope I can. So anyway, because now that I know how to do the work, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do the work. That was already done for me, thankfully. What's my husband calling for? Hold on a second. Okay, he was just telling me that he was going to bed. So anyway, where was I? Now I forgot where I was. I can't remember where I was. Okay, so those dates don't make sense, okay? Because it would have been after college. But they went to Florida when my mom was in college, which would have been 61 to 65. But my grandma didn't go to prison until 65. So, because my aunt said, I said, how did you go to Florida and spend the whole summer there? She goes, I don't know, on grandma's embezzled money. But then that means that either, my grandma was embezzling money, and they knew that, which I can't believe, and that my grandma just had this extra flow of cash that she was, or maybe she was afraid that she was going to get caught, and so they went down there for a summer or something. There's so many unanswered questions at this point. Now I'm wondering if that was it. She was trying to get rid of money, so she just sent my mom and my aunt to Florida with all this money, just go, or whatever. And so, well, first I called Caroline today, and I was telling her about it, and Caroline has just as many questions as I do. And we were like, okay, well, or did I call my dad first? No, I called Caroline, she didn't answer, and then she called me back, but in between I called my dad. And this is what was weird. So I said to my dad on the phone, I said, you'll never believe what happened. And he was like, what? And I was like, this person found did this genealogy search and found grandma's prison records. And first he was like, your mom's mom, not my mom. I'm like, yeah. Am I finding out now that I have two grandmas that went to prison? Because my grandma on my dad's side, she was Rice Krispie treats, sitting in the kitchen cooking, stay-at-home mom, that kind of thing. And I said, yes, Dad. And he goes, and I go, now I know the dates and everything. He goes, well, it would have been 1965. And I'm like, what? And I go, I've asked you time and time again, when it would have been. And he goes, well, it would have been 1965 because we got married in 1967. We started dating in 65. And he goes, that would just make sense. And I'm like, wait a second. Now, and I said that to him, and he started laughing. He goes, yeah, well, he goes, you didn't really ask me before when it was. And I was like, well, maybe I didn't ask him when it was. I don't know. Except for I asked, because they were in foster care when they were younger, which he said. He goes, I always thought she was arrested when they were younger, so maybe this is the second time. That's what he said to me. And I go, well, wait a second, Dad. I said, then that means that you wouldn't have met Grandma until, did you not meet her, before you and Mom got married? And he goes, I don't remember. And I go, what do you mean you don't remember? He goes, I remember your mom telling me. He goes, I remember us being at a restaurant, and we were on a date, and your mom told me. But he goes, I don't remember whether or not, I met your grandma before. And then he was like, and that's kind of weird. He goes, I don't remember that. So then we talked a little bit, and my dad, he doesn't, my dad remembers, really nothing about the whole grandma situation. So, but I will say this. My dad loved my grandma, and my grandma loved my dad. So, I don't know. But at this point, my dad is such a truth teller that, if there was stuff going on, my dad would tell me. I know that he would tell me. because he knows I want to know, and he would just be like, well, they're all gone anyway at this point, so who does it really hurt anyway? My dad could care less, right? I mean, he's not somebody that's going to keep a bunch of family secrets. He just doesn't. So I was like, okay. So I called and talked to Caroline. Well, I'm talking to Caroline on the phone, and I'm telling her what my dad said. And she goes, well, my mom and dad got married before your mom and dad. And I said, yeah. And she goes, but I remember Grandma being in the pictures at my mother's wedding. And I'm like, oh, that's right. I do too. I said, I see pictures of Grandma at somebody's wedding. And she goes, well, is it your mom's or is it my mom's? And I'm like, okay, now I got to go down and I got to look at the pictures, right? Which I haven't done yet. And Caroline's going to look at her pictures, because if I said, well, we don't know. Maybe she got a pass to come to the wedding. Maybe she was like in a halfway house. Maybe she was on parole. Like, we don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it could have been a million different things that we're never going to know now, probably. But my dad keeps on going back to this thing of them being in foster care. And this is what's so weird, is that he always brings up, I mean, now I don't know, in retrospect, what my mom told me was true or wasn't true. I think I need to go to the psychic. I don't know why I just thought that. This is so weird. I just had this thought, like, I was thinking to myself what my mom would think about me talking about this or wanting to know. And the next thing I thought was, you need to go to a psychic. That is so weird. I need to go to a psychic. I feel like I need to go to a psychic. I feel like I'm going to find something out if I go. But anyway, so he always brings it back to this thing that when, like, and Caroline and I were doing the dates and stuff, like, my mom always said she was like 4 when her dad died, because my mom and my aunt's dad died of lung cancer, and he was like 39. Which I found out that wasn't true. He was like 42 or something like that. And that they were actually like 6 and 7. Which Caroline and I, we thought they were 3 years apart. They're only 2 years apart. Which we would have always known if we had ever done the math, because we looked at their birthdays. I mean, there's nothing scandalous about their birthdays. But they're literally like almost 2 years apart. Which would make sense, being like sophomore, senior. Like, which 61 to 59. Yeah, that would make sense. So anyway, my dad keeps on going back to this thing about when they were fostered out. Now, my mom said that they were she would say fostered out. I don't even know what that word means. She would say we were fostered out to family members. And when I met with my aunt that time, she said, no, she goes, we were in foster care. And I said, what do you mean? And she goes, we were in foster care, Peter. She goes, and my aunt, like, weirdly always called, my grandma and grandpa, well, I never met my grandpa to even call him grandpa, but she said, she would always call mommy and daddy, which I always thought was kind of bizarre. But she said, or maybe mother and daddy is what I think she said, mother and daddy, because they always called my grandma mother. And we're very respectful of her, you know, like, now in retrospect, knowing all this kind of stuff, it's weird that they were like so intensely respectful of her and stuff. But anyway, so I said, well, Mom said that you guys were fostered out to, like, family members. And she said, well, we were, but that was before Daddy passed away. And she said, or Daddy died, or whatever she said. And she said, and that was, like, when we were in school during the year, we would stay with them. But in the summers, they couldn't afford to keep us. I don't know what this is about, okay? But apparently, like, they could only afford to stay in apartments back then. My grandfather was a bartender. My grandma was a bookkeeper. She was good with numbers, my mom always said. I swear, I mean, I look back on some of this stuff. My mom was like, Grandma was always great with numbers. Well, of course she was. You know? I mean, and I'm not saying that to be funny. I mean, I know it is kind of funny in retrospect, but it's like, if my mother said it once, I swear she said it 100 times. You know, you always want to make sure that you take business math classes and accounting and things like that and learn how to type, because your grandma, she was a great bookkeeper, and you always have a job if you're a bookkeeper, if you can keep books. And I thought, now I look at that and I think, God, that's kind of weird that my mom said that, knowing everything that she did. But anyway, so I said, okay, so back in the day, like when my mom and my aunt would have been really young, like I don't know if it was just the summers or when it was, but they couldn't afford to stay in apartments where you could have kids. So they had to stay in places that were cheaper, but you couldn't have kids there, right? which meant that my mom and my aunt had to go and stay with family members. And my dad even said this today. He said, your mom went with one and your aunt went with another. And I knew that because my mom talked a lot about that in her life, that being separated from my aunt and things like that. And actually, it was like this kind of huge blow up on my mom's 60th birthday. We went to Chicago, my ex and I, Caroline, my mom, and my aunt, and we were at this restaurant, and it became this like huge blow up issue. I think that's when my mom kind of finally realized that she was separated from my aunt. Like, she'd kind of always known it, but like my aunt said something. I can't remember even. It started with them talking about 0 property lines in real estate. It was so weird. It was the weirdest. Anyway, that whole trip was nice, but it was kind of very weird too. So anyway, Caroline arranged this whole trip, and my mom and my aunt just like did not. It was just, I remember we walked into the W Hotel in Lakeshore Drive, which was brand new and beautiful, and my aunt goes, well, it isn't the Ritz-Carlton. I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be this weekend. But anyway, it was fun. It was a nice weekend. My ex had a ruptured appendix like 3 days before and had been like in emergency surgery, and he was like up there in so much pain and basically just stayed in the hotel room the whole week with minus the dinners and things that we went to. I can't even believe, looking back, that he went up there. But anyway, is that what it's called, a ruptured appendix? I can't remember. But anyway, appendicitis, and then he had to have, you know, the operation where you have the scar and stuff like that. But anyway, that way I can remember my dad coming in for that, and I've talked about that on here recently. But anyway, God, he was like, I've never seen somebody so excited to have surgery because he was in so much pain. I remember we sat there that night and he was in so much pain, and I was like, what do you think it is? He's like, I don't know, I feel like maybe it's something I ate, but like it hurts. And I remember I called my dad, and we literally sat there for like 3 hours and didn't do anything, and he just kept on saying, God, I hurt so bad. It was like maybe 5 hours. I don't know. We were doing something, watching movies or something. He just was in so much pain. He kept on like going like this. And so finally I called my dad, and my dad said, put him on the phone, and he was like, where is it? And he said, is it, you know, like to the left or whatever it is of your belly button? He goes, yeah. He goes, you need to get to the hospital now. He goes, now. He goes, that this is no joke. Which, by the way, my dad had a ruptured appendix when he was in Chicago, and that they were living in Evanston, and my dad drove from Evanston to downtown Chicago while my mom was asleep, had the operation, and drove himself home, and my mom never knew about it. Is that not crazy? Anyway, because he knew that my mother would freak out about it. My stepmom and I talk about that. She's like, that is so your father. She's like, my dad is like, take care of business. He's just like, always takes care of business, you know? So anyway, I mean, if that was me, it would be a 3-alarm circus. Like, everybody needs to know and whatever. But anyway, maybe not so much today, but back in the day, it would have been like that. The battery's at like half mast. I hope to God I have another battery with me. Now I get in this long story and then I don't have a battery with me. Oh, please tell me yes, I did. I brought another battery. I hope it's charged. So anyway, my aunt told me that they were in foster care. So I was like, well, when were you in foster care? She didn't really get into it. I don't remember what she said, but she said it was after their dad had died. Or daddy, as she referred to him. So I was like, okay. So they were fostered out to family members in the summers. I mean, this is like in the 40s, you guys, okay? So like this would have been like, I don't know, like that time of the world or whatever. And then they were in foster care. And then my grandma went to prison. And I'm wondering if they were in foster care because my grandma went to prison. That's all I can think. And I, like, talking to my dad on the phone today about it, he was like, well, when people embezzle money, they don't usually just do it one time. I'm like, how do you know so much about embezzlers? Like, you know what I mean? And I said that to him, and he goes, well, I watch all those shows on TV. I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, I mean, that's just not the first. I'm like, so anyway, I'm like, now there's just all these more questions that I have that I don't know, you know, that I'm like, this is so bizarre. This is just so bizarre. So anyway, Caroline and I are going to get to the bottom of it, though, and find out. I don't know that we'll ever know anything. Maybe it doesn't matter. Who knows? Yeah, it probably doesn't. It matters to me. I want to know, you know? I cannot begin to tell you how thankful I am that I found this. I can't even believe it either. And, I almost missed this email. That's what is crazy. I like saw it and I was like, what is this? Like, this is crazy, you know? But anyway, so I'm so incredibly thankful for that. Still don't really know. And now those years throw me off, because if it had been the years when my mom was in college, then it would have just totally made sense to me. You know what I mean? Then I would have been like, well, that was when my mom was in college, so I guess that makes sense. But now I don't know. So that is the mystery of my family. Did I also tell you that people think that my mom was a twin? Okay, this is another weird story. I think I've talked about this on here before. So, I probably should be careful about this, though, because I don't know if this guy is still alive or not. So, there was this guy in town that was my mom's age. And my mom went to Broderpool High School, and he ended up going to a private school. He went to Broderpool 1 year. And I've seen his picture. I saw my mom's picture and his picture of the same year, and they look like twins. It's weird, okay? And, so, my mom, like, she really never interacted with him a whole lot, I guess. He came to this school once. Like, okay, his dad died, and then he ended up living with some family, and then going and living with other family, and he came from, like, this very wealthy family, okay? And, so, he ended up going to a private school. He ended up going to Park, which is, like, Park Tutor today, but back then it was, like, there was Park and there was Tutor, and one was a boys' school and one was a girls' school. So, after, like, the first year, my mom never saw him again in her high school. But my mom's friend, Diane, her brother was friends with his friend group or something like that. So, my mom, like, Diane would say stuff to my mom about him and be like, oh, you guys look so much alike, I think you're twins. My mom, like, she didn't like it. It made her nervous and, you know, whatever. I don't know, when she was in high school. So she really never saw him again. And it was kind of like this high-profile case, like, his family. Which, that's another thing that, like, I really haven't looked into. I should, I guess. But now, like, with all of these mysteries of my mom and my grandma, it would totally make sense, like, in retrospect. How? I don't know. So, anyway, well, he had been adopted. Okay, that was the big thing. So, he had been adopted and at birth. And, I remember my mom one time looked at her birth certificate, though, and she said it would say twin. And there was something sketchy about my mom's birth certificate. I have to look at it again. I can't remember what it was. But she was like, where it would have said that, like, anyway, it was sketchy. The birth certificate was sketchy. So anyway, so flash forward years and years and years, and my mom's friend Diane moves to Beaver Island, Michigan. I've talked a lot about Diane. Diane's the friend that died 3 years before my mom passed away. My mom was devastated, and, you know, she said to me, who will know my soul? And they were like diehard best Judies their entire life. So, you know, my mom would talk to Diane all the time, like once a week, you know, and Diane would say, oh, he came up to visit the island, and, you know, he was here with my brother, and blah, 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 whatever. So when Diane came to visit, she only came to visit like one time that I remember for an extended time. She came for like 2 weeks with her friend one time. And I just talked about that on here recently because they rented all these movies and they stayed up real late and all this kind of stuff. But when she was here, Diane said, and I at the time probably would have been about 12, maybe. No, I would have been older than that. I would have been about 13 or 14. It had to have been the year that my grandma died. It was around that time. My grandma died in January, so it would have been maybe that following summer that she came to visit. And Diane is like, Peter, did your mom ever tell you this story about how she has a twin? And my mom was like, Diane, don't start with this crap again. I've told you for years and years and years, I hate this story. And Diane was like, well, you don't know what happened this summer. And she's like, well, what happened this summer? And she was like, he came up to the island. She's like, he got his adoption record opened. But you can, because the adoption record is so old, you can only see like dates, right? Of like, you know, whatever. His birthday was within 3 days. It was like they couldn't, like, they wouldn't identify like what your birth date was on these records. They said it was within 3 days of like the date of my mom's birthday. It just went out of focus. I don't know why. Why did it just do that? Come on, not tonight. So anyway, he found out his birth date. Well, he didn't find out his birthday, but they said, like, if your birthday was, like, June 1st, they said, like, your birthday is within, like, 3 days of June 2nd. Okay, like, that was all that they would narrow it down to. But they didn't give, like, birth parents or anything like that, but he was born in Indianapolis, Indiana. And Diane was like, he's your brother, and blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. And my mom did not like it. Okay, flash forward to that Christmas. It's my Aunt Kathy and my Uncle Dave in the front seat. We're going to like mass or something. Not mass, so we weren't Catholic, but we were going to like some church service, and we were coming home to like have Christmas dinner. And my mom and Caroline and I are in the back seat. And I'm like, oh, Aunt Kathy, did you ever know about this story? And I said his name and all this kind of stuff, right? And my Aunt Kathy was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, yeah, Diane, when she was here this summer, blah, blah, blah. I'm like bringing it up. And my Aunt Kathy got like silent, like immediately. And my mom's like, well, Pierre, like this is just, you would have to know Diane, and she's a conspiracy theorist, because my mom and Diane were conspiracy theorists. They could sit and just for hours talk about like the Kennedy assassination and all this kind of stuff, right? So my aunt's up there, she's not saying anything, right? My aunt's real chatty. And so Caroline started asking questions or something, I think. And my mom goes, it's just really bizarre. And then they found his birth date, and it's like within 3 days of mine or something like that. And my aunt kind of just like sat up and like got like real weird or whatever. And my mom said to her, she goes, do you know something about this? And my aunt just shook her head like, no. And she goes, it's foolish. There's nothing to it. And my mom goes, do you know something about this? And my aunt turned literally around in her seat. She goes, whatever secrets mother had, she died with. And that's what she said. And that was the end of it. And my mother, I would bring it up, and she just wouldn't talk about it. After that, I don't know if she and my aunt had a conversation. I don't know what happened. But after that, the other thing is, my aunt always said to me she wanted to write a book about, like, my aunt wanted to write her memoir about like where she came from and how she ended up, like, you know, I joke, like Jane is kind of like my aunt sometimes, that like on my drama channel. My aunt always wanted to write this book, and it was going to be called The Mother of a Junior League President or something like that. I can't remember what it was going to be called, but she wanted to write this memoir about like basically her life and my grandma's life, and like how she came from all of this. And I would say, well, what is there to the book though? Like, Aunt Kathy, I mean, this was before I knew that my grandma had gone to prison or any of this kind of stuff. Like, there was, you know, nothing. I just thought my grandma was somebody that like worked all her life and had a retirement party or whatever, and lived in an apartment until she passed away. Like, that's what I remember of my grandma, you know? She was a great grandma, and, you know, she was not mean, I was gonna say, she's a badass cook. I mean, she was an unbelievable cook, like nobody's business. Probably was a cook in prison, was the truth, you know? And she just cooked, I mean, she was an unbelievable cook. And was a great grandma. I loved her, you know, so much. I wasn't gonna say to death, but you know. So anyway, I don't know. I cleaned off my windows and they are so dirty. Makes me so mad. But like, I wonder, like, all the stuff that I will never know about that. I probably will never know any of it, you know? So there's that. There's just all kinds of craziness, you know? It's just like all these weird things. I guess that's kind of how family is, isn't it? Right? You take the good, you take the bad, you take it all, and then you have the facts of life. And you know what's really weird is that my mom's concern was that I would look at my grandma differently, but I don't look at my grandma any differently. You know, I don't know what the circumstance. I don't condone it, but I don't know what the circumstances of her life were or why she felt like she needed to do that. I'm more intrigued by it than anything else. And in all honesty, when Caroline and I talk about it, what we say is that it makes a lot of sense to us why our mothers were the way that they were. My aunt was like, my mom and my aunt were not best friends. Like, they were close. Like, they were as close as two sisters could be, but they fought a lot. There would be times that my aunt would call me and she would say, I love your mother, but if she wasn't my sister, she wouldn't be in my life because she drives me crazy. And, but my aunt had this, like, incessant need to protect my mother at any expense, you know? And, I kind of wonder why that was sometimes. You know, it was more than just how a sister is with her sister. It wasn't like sibling whatever. Indy Scream Park, they're having haunted houses this year. Who knew? That looks scary to me. I don't do haunted houses. I'll have a heart attack up in those things. But anyway, I don't know. Maybe I'll never know. I mean, there's so many different things. Like, well, first of all, unless somebody wrote it down in a diary, you know. You know, I haven't read completely through my mom's journals. Maybe I need to do that. Maybe I need to get all of her journals together and sit down and start going through them one by one. Maybe I need to do that. I've never done that. Because I really, like, when I compile them together and put them all, I mean, she's got journals for years, you guys. I mean, I don't even know. And it's weird, like, well, I talked about this on here one time, that, like, she'll write, like, 3 dates in one journal, and then she picks up another journal and she starts writing in that, and then that one, and there's like 3 journals going at the same time, and so it's like you have to kind of put them all together to make sense of them. It's like real hard to understand, like, how she made any kind of rhyme or reason to it, you know? But I don't know, maybe I need to pull them out and start reading them. I remember when my mom passed away that night, a friend of ours, that was a really good friend of my mom's too, and she would come over before, okay, the battery is dying, so I need to go in here and change it. But this friend of ours would come over, and she was in recovery with my mom, and she would sit there and read the text with her, and they would watch movies, and she would do the crossword with her, and she just would keep her company. She was fantastic. She was just unbelievable in helping her. I remember when we went back to my mom's house. She was in the room that night that my mom passed away. And I remember when we went back to my mom's house, which is my condo now, and like, my mom had her Bible and her recovery text, and some other stuff underneath her bed. And I was like, kind of like just looking through stuff. I really hadn't. This is so weird to me. I have to tell you a story. Okay, hold on just a second. Okay. I think I was going that night to get stuff to start putting together, like, for her funeral. And my mom, oh, this battery is dead too. Are you kidding me? Well, the only other thing I wanted to say tonight was, and I'll finish this and I'll tell more of this story tomorrow, was that I got on my roller skates and I practiced them for a half an hour tonight. It's harder than it looks. I did not fall. I almost fell. I watched a video about beginning roller skating, which I'm gonna watch some more, and I'm gonna practice a half an hour every day until I can do it. You guys, it is so much harder than I ever thought that it would be. I did not remember it being this tough at all. It is, like, really hard. I'm actually gonna pull up my rollerblades from the basement and see if those are a little bit easier to start on. So, but anyway, I did get on the roller skates. I will finish this story tomorrow. I will talk more about it, like, after my mom died and going to her house and the journals. And I'll look into the journals tomorrow too if I have a chance before I vlog, and see if there's anything interesting that they say. But anyway, this battery is flashing, so it's gonna die any second. Thank you guys so much for watching. If nobody else has told you this today, I love you. It spooks me to be, like, sitting in a parking lot in the middle of the night. I don't know why. I do it all the time. It shouldn't scare me. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I want to finish this before it ends. So thank you so much for watching. Do kind things today. Random acts of kindness, and don't tell anyone. Let somebody know how much they mean to you. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love you, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye. Love you!